you, Nadeem. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be joining this national webinar today. I would also like to thank Dr. Nand Kishore for having me here, and the Department of Geopolitics at the Manipal Academy of Higher Education. After the two extraordinary presentations, Bazza Singh idea about what is linked to that geopolitics, and I think Dr. Samina Hamid gave a very good idea about the geo-economic aspect of it, which is not talked about much. Now, I have been asked, to give an idea on the Palestinian perspective, and I thought it is also an important, issue, especially because we have seen this conflict, this convoluted and complex conflict lingering on for the last, over 50 years, obviously, and there has been no in the last couple of decades, there has been no signs of, any progress towards peace between Israel and Palestine, and despite all kind of international efforts, there has been very, very little progress. In fact, the peace process has been completely halted, and Palestinian representatives as well as the Israeli side both have completely, more or less, refused to get back to the negotiations table. Now, since President Trump, took office, he has been trying to, kind of make some progress towards the Middle East, to restart or revive the Middle East peace process. And we all know he has been talking about the deal of the century, and there has been several other, issues that have been raised. President's son-in-law and senior advisor in the White House, Jared Kushner, has been making rounds of the entire region, especially the Gulf region, to try and revive the peace process. But nothing seemed to be working. And in August, after this, peace accord was announced, it was touted as, especially by the White House, as as a breakthrough. As a breakthrough, not only in the Israeli-Arab conflict, but also in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. One of the points which I think emanates from here is that whether it is a peace accord. Now, if you look at there are two aspects to it. One is the Israeli-Arab, larger Israeli-Arab problem or the conflict, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As far as the Israeli-Palestinian issue is concerned, I think the issue remains intact, even though its context has certainly, changed because of this signing of this accord. Now, when it comes to the Israeli-Arab, problem, I think it is a very significant development as far as the problem that has continued since since 1948. And in that sense, one can give credit to the Trump administration, despite all the vagaries associated with President Trump himself. One can give credit to the fact that he has been able to kind of create a situation where, or at least grab an opportunity which has been created due to the geopolitical developments in the region, to push Israel and UAE to move towards normalization. So in that sense, it is more of a normalization between Israel and Gulf countries than actually a peace, larger peace accord in that sense. And if one comes to the Israel-Arab, normalization, Israel-Gulf normalization, this is something very important. And people who have been following the developments as far as the Israel and Gulf rapprochement is concerned, they would understand that the process had started much earlier. Even during Barack Obama administration, towards the second, the first term of President Obama, there were some efforts, but it did not materialize. But given the changing geopolitical situation after Arab Spring, things started to move 2015 onwards, especially because of the opening of Israeli representative office in the UAE for the International Renewable Energy Agency in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, sorry. So in that sense, I think it is a very significant development. Now I'll come to the Palestinian aspect of it. And I think there are 5 or 6 issues which I'll highlight. And maybe from there on, we can take in terms of any questions and take the discussion forward. One of the most important things which needs to be understood from the Palestinian perspective is that it completely sidelines the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the conflict per se, in the larger regional political discourse. It's not as if the Israeli-Palestinian conflict had not already lost some of its preeminence as far as the regional politics is concerned post Arab Spring, and even before that also things have started to kind of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has started to become a little sidelined, more so in the context of Arab Spring and the national interest, the way Gulf countries looked at their own national interest and their own security interest. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has become completely, gone onto the background. And I think with this signing of the accord and the kind of fast movement we have seen onwards in the last month or so between UAE and Israel, I think it completely puts the issue of the conflict, the Palestinian conflict issue, completely on the background. So this is not no longer a preeminent issue in the issues that kind of that can be listed as far as the regional issues are concerned. That is the first point. The second point is the Palestinian rejection. Now, if you look at the statements and reaction, and as Ambassador Singh was also mentioning, that Palestinian leadership has completely rejected the deal, the normalization. They have termed it as backstabbing. They have termed it as treason. They have termed it as all kind of sometimes even one can actually, if one looks at from the Gulf perspective, these are very derogatory terms which has been used by the Palestinian leaders, Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority President, Saeb Erekat, who is the chief negotiator, the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, and the Palestinian leadership has received support from Iran and Turkey, largely in the region, and to some extent also Qatar, and obviously Lebanese Hezbollah. But I think one also needs to understand that this is a pattern which has been going on. The Palestinian side, except in the 1993, when there was a breakthrough, the Palestinian leadership has failed actually in grabbing opportunities that has been created, whatever little opportunity that has been created due to the geopolitics, or due to external actors, or due to support by the Arab leaders. So in that sense, one can actually see that the same pattern continues, and the Palestinian leadership has more or less failed to see the writing on the wall, that you need to come on the negotiations table if you really want to kind of make the most of any opportunity that comes to the fore. And one of the reasons, and that is this is the second point, and the third point is that the Palestinian leadership has also, they understand that they have lost a very important bargaining chip vis-a-vis Israel, and that is normalization of relations with Arab countries, with UAE, Bahrain, and yesterday Sudan. It is likely that there would be other countries as well that will make some move, if not formally, than informally. And we know that when it comes to Saudi Arabia, which is the most influential country in the region and the Islamic world, because of obvious reasons, has been informally, engaging with Israel over the last decade, or at least over the last half a decade. And in that sense, the bargaining chip with the Palestinians have used in the past, I think that they have lost it in that sense. And I highlighted the point about how the Gulf countries' priorities have changed over a period of time. For them, their own security and the prosperity of their people is more important. And in that sense, Iran is something which kind of occupies a prominent space in the psychology of Arab foreign policy psyche, Arab, security psyche. And this is also true with respect to Israel. And in that sense, that is something important that needs to be highlighted, that the security, it's more of a two countries with common security interest coming together and making some sort of a coalition. So in that sense, that is also an important aspect which needs to be understood. Now, before coming to the concluding point, I'll just make one more point, and that relates to the sense of, the frustration among the Gulf countries because of the Palestinian behavior. And that is something which is very important to understand, that over the years, the Arab countries, the Gulf countries who did not actually had a direct conflict with Israel, they continued supporting the Palestinian side, sometimes even at the cost of their own interest. And increasingly, one sees that if you look at some of the writings in the Arabic newspapers, in the English newspaper in Saudi Arabia and UAE, one can find that there have been several writings which actually kind of called for normalization of relations with Israel. So that is something which is, and if you look at, as last week, Prince Bandar, who is a prominent member of the Saudi royal family, he kind of publicly, during an interview, expressed the frustration. And he said that initially I felt anger because of the Palestinian reaction, but when I looked at the details and the kind of things which they have been saying, I felt hurt. And I think that also kind of expresses the sentiments of the Gulf countries. Now, just to conclude, the Palestinian side finds themselves in a very difficult situation right now. And I think they have also not only lost a very important strategic, kind of ally that were speaking on their behalf. I would also, and this is not something which I would say with a lot of pleasure. I'm saying it with a lot of, one can understand the pain of the Palestinian people. But the Palestinian leadership, if they do not understand that they need to, grab the opportunities created by geopolitics and because of the external power, they'll continue to lose. They'll continue to be on the failing side, as the Prince Bandar was saying. And this is not something which can easily kind of go away. And we have seen that, for example, there has been some effort at reconciliation, and that has been going on. Egypt has been trying to reconcile between Hamas and Fatah and other factions within the Palestinian Palestinian leadership, Palestinian organizations, but that has not certainly that has actually not resulted. I mean, every time they agree on a reconciliation, 1 week later things go back to the square one. So I think if I look at from the Palestinian point of view, I'll take this as a sign that if we do not put our act together, if we do not work in terms of, taking opportunities as they come, it will, they will continue to squander their chances. And I think I'll stop here. I've exhausted my 15 minutes, and I'll be very happy to, answer any questions that comes from here. Thank you.